running an actual business as a yogi, what does that mean? Like, what does it mean bringing yoga or spirituality and running a business together?
Action!
Welcome to the Spirit of Yoga. We are Kirsten
and Devdas
from the Akasha Yoga Academy. In today's Tea Chat, we respond to your questions. This month, exploration is a line and center, and we are now answering the questions that came in from you. The first one I love. How do we balance sharing yoga and the business of yoga? Beautiful question. Do you want to start?
So fun. I feel like we kind of know who this one is from. They came from Instagram. This came from our dear Kie, our beloved Kie, who we just had the privilege to see a few days ago, which is such a joy. Sometimes one of the great joys of living in paradise, basically, is that these beautiful souls come through and we get to connect and see them. And there was so much joy in my heart seeing her, and also just watching her grow, actually, right? It's like she came with her own students and she held the space beautifully, and she was such a mature teacher, that like just the whole event, of course, we were invited also to participate in their retreat. That was also a tremendous joy. But also I felt even more touched just watching her in her own soul's growth and exploration. So somehow wanted to start sharing by sharing this joy in my heart of Kie and her beautiful sharing around the world and what she's doing. But I feel like it comes, the essential question comes down to the same thing. It's like, okay, you are offering something of value as a teacher. And in fact, one of the things that I was talking about with Kie is, in the modern world of yoga, I think partially because there's this idea that, okay, everybody's equal. And that's true. Like, everyone is equal. But also there's a big difference between 20 years of teaching and 1 year of teaching. And I feel somehow the community mostly recognizes that, but not always. And as you go along further on your journey, I feel like you see it's just an exchange of value. It's like you bring something of tremendous value with your experience, your knowledge, your love for yoga, your passion, your energy, your enthusiasm, your everything. And it's right that something come back from that exchange. I'll tell a funny story, which I feel like illustrates a bit the point. Like, when I was living in India, we were teaching these workshops for everybody, and they were extremely reasonably priced. They were not like outside of people's, potential. And it felt right. It's like, okay, we, cost us time, energy, money, also moving around, doing things and creating things for people. And then one time we had this student come and he was really giving like a hard luck story, like, oh, I want to, but I can't. And finally I just said to him, look, for you, it's free. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, if you really want to be here and you can't afford to be here, what can you afford? Okay, you say you can afford very little or even nothing. Great, then come for nothing. But then I felt like in my heart, I said, okay, but it is an exchange of energy. So maybe you come and you do a little bit of service of some kind. Maybe you sweep the floor of the hall before everybody comes, or you just do something. Like, it wasn't intended that be something really hard or complicated. It was more just intended like understanding the dynamics of exchange. And later this man did come to the course, and he came with such an attitude of like, I can't be bothered, don't ask me to do anything. And I felt, wow, that's a lesson for me, not for him. Right? It's like, the lesson for me is value what you offer. Like, you know, and stand behind it, like stand behind your offer. I mean, I feel like in many ways yogis are kind of like idealists, right? It's like they would like to live in a world um, where there was more freedom. They would like to live in a world where there's more equality. They would like to live in a world where, you know, there's less social injustice of all different kinds, and that speaks to their heart. And so many times it's like, but there's something like more deep and more powerful and more true in standing behind what you offer and seeing the value of what you offer. And you know, slowly, I think as you see that, you get less and less. It's just like the financial side of things straightens itself out, and you don't get as many. You don't get as many conflicts or or troubles of that variety because it's become clear in your own heart.
Yeah, I feel this question has actually many different aspects we can talk about. Like one aspect is putting value, a monetary value onto your offers. That's oftentimes more at the beginning, like can I really charge for my class or not? Like a concern. And in my personal experience, actually, to offer yoga in a society that is based on exchanging energy through money, to take that away takes away value as well.
Mm.
So, in my experience, basically priced offers kind of a clear agreement basically on
Yeah.
how we meet, and money is just an energetic value also, or like a
Mm.
materialized um, system of energy exchange. And I felt when this was defined and clear, it was also much more valued in a way.
Mm.
Like I had at the beginning also this idea to rather offer on donation, kind of this is how many people started to not offer free, but on donation to slowly step into the field of charging. um, I didn't find that this works very well because we don't understand the concept of donation. Donation is like pay as little as you like, rather than in like the Eastern traditions. There's a different understanding actually. Like when I think of Buddhist retreats running on donation base, they really work because people really translate the value into money and give back in this way according to how much they actually can afford, not how
Mm.
little, but
Mm.
like they look from it from the top, not from the bottom
Yeah.
end of the scale.
I even remember like our students in the 300-hour course, right? Some students in our 300-hour course got together and put together a scholarship for the next
Yeah,
people
yeah,
that would
right.
come, and like I feel that was exactly that. It was just like I see that I've gotten profound value from this, and I would like to see that someone else have that experience.
But I feel this concept is not very present and understood or known in the
Yeah.
Western field. So donation means just give a little bit, that's okay.
Yeah.
But then that leads also to a frustration in the teacher himself,
Mm.
because this is how much people basically value your offer energetically. Like,
Mm.
that's not great. So I feel it makes much more sense to be clearly, free projects
Yeah.
where you just like there to give,
Yeah.
and then have next to that
Mhm.
clearly priced offers. So that's one aspect I feel, how to bring together the sharing of yoga and the business of yoga. The other I feel is that
While we're still on them,
yeah,
can
please.
I
Yeah, yeah,
add
yeah,
one
yeah.
while we're
Please,
still
please,
on
please.
the topic of like the finances and how the
Yeah, yeah,
finances
please.
work? There was somebody in our community who had an idea that I found really inspiring. He um, basically charged. I think he felt like what you were saying, not wanting to charge, but or wanting to do something for free. But he came up with a different idea. He had a specific price, and everybody had to pay that price. But it all goes into a pot, and it was a whole series of classes. And every time you come to one of the series, you can write down your favorite charity. And at the end of the series, the charity that has the most votes, he would give the money to that charity.
Beautiful.
And yeah, it felt like, okay, that's somehow a nice combination, right? It's like you're still receiving energy, but you're just giving that energy forward into something that's for the benefit of humanity and of life. So, I mean, I feel like that's maybe kind of a third option that's somewhere in between. You have your absolutely free
Yeah.
gifts for people. That's also very beautiful. You have something where the energy is just given back to life and to the community in a larger sense. And then you have situations where it's appropriate that people pay what's right to come and experience.
Yeah, so I feel this is more like at the beginning of starting into teaching yoga, and I think a lot or many people in our community are, of course, also in this situation to, now be ready to teach and how to start that. But I think there's also another two aspects actually to the question. Another is like, how do I bring together the outreach, the advertisement, the promotion, the talking to people, drawing people into with your yogic values and with basically the spirit of yoga. And there we of course see, I feel a lot of examples where it just doesn't work very well, where the spirit of yoga gets lost in yoga being a business product basically, and there's no yoga behind anymore. It's just
Right.
like the image of yoga that's being sold as any other product, and they're like, where do I stand when I'm
Sure.
kind of already in my business? Like, how do I reach out? How do I address people? Like, there's different strategies, right? Like to basically show people where they are lacking and how you answer their lacks and bring them in to your business like that. Like simple thing, yoga to improve your sleep, right? That's a topic. Many people have troubles with sleeping. Do I start offering basically catering to such problems to bring people to yoga, basically like the outreach kind of, or do I come from the full kind of like
Find your joy.
find your joy, exactly, like where am I in that and why, and what is like how does that go together with spirit of yoga. So I feel this is another aspect where a lot of contemplation can and should go into, like yoga becoming a business, like when it's really becoming growing and becomes a business, like how to balance these two aspects of running a business, sustaining a business, and at the same time being true to the spirit of yoga.
Yeah.
So I think that's almost a bit of a call to make your business your yoga.
Yeah.
Like to how do you make the this the business side of life
Align.
yoga align.
I mean, I feel like that question, essentially, for me at least, comes down to like the integrity of your own practice. Actually, like we had a woman on our course. She touched everybody, I feel, and she's basically saying, at graduation. She's at graduation ceremony. She's saying, I just took this course for myself. I didn't have any intention of teaching. I just wanted to deepen my practice. I'm just wanted to be here. And um, yeah, now that I'm graduating, like my studio opens next week. And of course, that was touching in itself. It's like her heart had been just profoundly touched. And then how can you not want to share that? How can
Yeah.
you not want to share that with
Yeah.
your community? And I feel like that's the natural impulse, you could say, I think, of almost everybody who wants to be a yoga teacher. It's like you just do it because you love it.
Yeah.
And then it's like, the more that you discover, the more that you find, the more that you love it, the more that you want to share it.
Yeah.
And just to kind of a follow up on that story, she sent us recently in our WhatsApp group an actual video of the practice space that she'd created for people. And I was almost in tears. It was like so much love
Mm.
went into that space. I feel if you open the door to that space, you know already that this person is absolutely in integrity with their yoga, because so much care and so much thought and so much thoughtfulness and so much love and so much like energy went into making this space beautiful for people. And it just feels like, you know, I don't know, I feel like when you have that kind of integrity, it's so much easier to stand behind your offer in a way, right? It's like because you know where it's coming from. It's coming from your desire to share. Like one of the privileges of teaching teachers is that we see this all the time, right? Another woman, she was in UK. She said she was invited out to do forest yoga. Now, forest yoga in UK is a bit of a dangerous thing, actually, because it rains all the time and it's often wet and overcast. And she said, sure enough, she's out there in the forest with the people, and it starts to rain.
Mm.
And she continues to do yoga with the people. They go all the way through the rain, and then they go back to the building, and she had brought towels for every single person, like just in case. It just felt like, wow, when you put so much heart and so much integrity and so much love into what you do, of course you can stand behind it, right? You can stand behind with integrity behind your offer, because your offer is not primarily a financial offer, it's primarily a love offering. And then the finances are fine. In a weird way, I feel like in many human relationships, if you pick it up that way, it works better. Like people tend to pick up relationships by like, what can I get from this
Mm.
relationship? And it's like that question, I feel like as a yogi, is a very uninteresting question. It's more like, can I find my own love and joy and presence and make that so strong that my relationships are just an outpouring of that. That's just an opportunity for me to express the natural love of my heart that's present in everything that I do. And if you come with that approach, things tend to work out by themselves.
Yeah. Kind of sharing yoga because it's just so full in your heart, and it kind of needs to be shared, rather than there's like trying to find a financial concept for your life, kind of to make
Yeah.
your life financially work with something that's kind of fun. Um, yeah, so there's different intentions, right? So the intention is definitely um, a big point.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I feel the other aspect to it is running an actual business as a yogi. What does that mean? Like, what does it mean bringing yoga or spirituality and running a business together?
Mm.
And I loved so much what you recently shared with me about that, and maybe you want to share that here too. Um, about basically the relationships being an expression of the heart, and in this way putting basically the well-being of everyone involved in the business above meeting numbers, meeting timelines, meeting XYZ. So
Yeah.
basically, to bring spirituality into business means making, putting the humans first,
Yeah. Yeah.
putting the beings before numbers.
Yeah.
That I found super inspiring, actually. A very clear
Mm.
starting point.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's actually, in some ways, like that's just kind of like a tie on to what we were just speaking about, right? It's like if in your heart you love everybody, and like how can you not want what's best for them?
yeah,
And you know, what's best for them is also going to be constantly changing, right? It's like we're growing individuals, and we need different things at different times of our life, and uh, you know, as that like unfolds for somebody, the intention to have their highest interest in heart is the thing that doesn't change, right? It's like the expression of how it's working can change, but that you have their highest interest in heart never has to change. Like that can just stay present, uh, and then you can see how that works itself into the dynamics of what's happening. Um, but I feel like that's the, I would say in a weird way, and it's a strange thing to say, but I also feel like I learned a little bit about that in India. Like in India, kind of sometimes the shopkeeper wants you to like you go buy something, and I came a lot with this Western mindset of like, this is just a shopkeeper, I'm going in to buy something, I'm gonna get my business done, and I'm then gonna go do something else, and I only have a certain amount of time, and I want it to kind of happen in a relatively fast transactional kind of way. Um, and then I go inside and I find my thing and I'm checking out, and then the shopkeeper says, wouldn't you like some chai before you go? And when I was first there, it was always kind of like, no, I just want the lamp that I came to buy, like, you know. And it took me a while to realize that there's something really profoundly beautiful and lovely about that offer, because it's not about the transaction, it's about the relationship. And even if you never see that person again,
mm,
there's something beautiful about having shared something together, shared that moment together, you know. Um, and I feel like that's the that's the ideal of a yogic business, right? Is people first, um, and that tends to, and not just people actually. I mean, I would even maybe take it one step further and say people, planet, animal, all the like, if everything is one and that's the experience of your heart, then you would want the best for everything, right? And when it came time to make a choice about about something, you would think and consider accordingly. What's right for everybody. And in the yogic, I feel like in the yogic way of doing business, something very very powerful to contemplate can just be what's trying to happen. like rather than I have this plan and it should fit like this and you should fit here and this should all work like this. It's like, well, even when something goes wrong in your business,
Mm.
it's like, okay, like let's step back for a second and contemplate like what's meant to be happening in the situation, what's the best thing for everybody involved in the situation. And I feel like that takes kind of being able to step back a little bit. um, I it's in my heart, and I don't know if this will ever come true in my lifetime or not, but it's in my heart that grounding become the central part of the human experience. Like before you meet with somebody, even just casually, even your friends, you're sitting down to have coffee, you give them a big hug. Maybe you sit for a moment and just feel into each other. Like, I don't know if you remember, you must remember, like the very first time I came for my job interview at Akasha. It was like we'd never met each other before. I never met Burkhard and Kirsten, and then we're meeting in this coffee shop, chai shop, I should say, because we're in India. So we meet in this chai shop. Ah, hello, I'm Devdas. Ah, hello, I'm Kirsten. Ah, hello, I'm Burkhard. Then we just sit there, and maybe the first 5 minutes or even 10 minutes, just nothing said. Just close the eyes, just feeling the energy. And then Kirsten was kind of like, "Can you teach this?" And I was like, "Yeah." "Okay, can you do this?" "Yeah, yeah." "Okay, let's do it." But somehow that like model of life experience resonates very strongly with me, and I even feel like I really hope in my heart that we take that beyond business and into life. It's like into political decisions,
Mm.
into schools, into you know government agencies, like into everything. It's like because if you start kind of ego first, there can be a lot of friction in that process. If you kind of start heart first, silence first, there's a greater tendency for there to be more harmony and kind of people keep each other's heart as the primary motive behind why they're doing what they're doing. Um,
What a question.
I love you peeled it apart also beautifully. Like
Many, many layers. And I feel
yeah,
really, for us yogis who decide to share, it's really an invitation to let life, to let business, to let your work be your yoga,
mm,
and to not separate. Yoga is when I'm sitting here peacefully on my mat and
yeah,
meditate, but also be in your yoga when the business goes down,
yeah,
when things go
yeah,
wrong,
yeah,
when internal clashes are
yeah,
happening. Like, how do we respond to that? Like,
yeah.
how are we present to, yeah, to live our yoga in the world? Like,
That's I sometimes tell the story, and I think it's a really fun one. One of the most non-attached human beings. I think like in the yogic world, the idea of attachment many times is slightly misplaced. One of the most non-attached human beings I ever met was the CEO of the largest Ayurvedic pharmaceutical company in the entire world. And he had huge responsibility, I would say crushing responsibility, and I happened to meet him in this circumstance, and he didn't even mention to me what he did for work. And then eventually we're just sitting there together and enjoying each other's company, and finally I say to him, so what's your thing, what do you do? Oh, I work for a company. Okay, like after a few questions it comes out he doesn't work for the company, he owns the company. He's like the CEO of this company, and then we start talking a little bit more. Oh yeah, it's an Ayurvedic pharmaceutical company. Oh yeah, like what's the name of the company? And then it was kind of like, that's a pretty big company. Oh yeah, it's the largest Ayurvedic pharmaceutical company in the world. It's just kind of like, wait, wait a minute. Like, so I started asking him more questions. How many people work for you? Like around 300, 350 all around the world. isn't that a stressful position to be in? Like you have 350 employees. Like, no, it's kind of just like one big family. Everything works out for itself, you know. Just kept pushing him to see, like, okay, is there any point at which this is going to register for you as something that's like stressful or challenging or difficult? And he was just absolutely centered.
Hmm.
And you know, at that point in my life, I was thinking, if I really was responsible for 350 people, I think I'd be stressed out. But he was not at all. Like
Yeah.
he was just absolutely in his heart about the whole thing, and it left such an impression, you
Mm-hmm.
know, of just like, okay, it's not necessarily the circumstances and how the circumstances are.
Yes.
It's what you do with those circumstances and how you are. Um, and you know that kind of like profoundly elevated yogic uh, model of business that he exemplified in his personal life left a very strong impression with me of kind of right action in business
Yeah.
or right motivation in business.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Should we move on to the
Yeah.
next
Yeah.
question?
Yeah.
Um, this is now a question coming from a different perspective than the Ayurvedic CEO. It is hard for me to be centered. I feel very uncentered actually. My life is hectic with 3 kids and a full time job. I'm running constantly behind all the expectations of life. What can I do to be centered? I guess that's a pretty common experience for people, um, especially with kids. But not only with kids. I think that's a common Western life experience, I feel.
Mm.
Um, being overwhelmed by the many, many tasks that need to be tackled
Mm.
uh, throughout the day and how to be centered
Mm.
in that.
You're the mama here, so you you have to tell us your tricks. What tricks do you have up your sleeve?
Maybe to start with the experience that one's running behind everything definitely radically changes when we come to a place of centeredness and we're just doing whatever is required in the
Mm.
moment rather than basically having this mental to do list how to make it through the day and kind of all the time being out of what's actually happening. Um, how to be centered, even though like a stressful, hectic life, that sounds to me like there is just lots to do and very little space to be, um, is that life gets less stressful and you will be more centered if you really dedicate time to your own well-being. I think this is
Mm.
something that we can easily forget in
Mm.
the feeling. It's more a feeling. There's so much time, there's so many tasks. When I align them, the time is actually too little, the tasks are too much, so there's definitely no time for recharge, no time for practice, no time for self care. Um, so you kind of exclude that from your daily schedule. But I feel it's really, really important to make space
Mm.
for that because I
Mm.
feel when you start making space for that, everything else you do is more efficient and therefore needs less
Mm.
time in a
Mm.
way.
Mm.
And when you're in a place of clarity and centeredness because you make it a priority, it's also like how much value do you give to being centered, and how important is
Mm.
that to you,
Mm.
versus um,
Yeah.
dishes and that, and meeting this person and doing that thing, and
Yeah.
like how much value do you give actually to your own centeredness.
Mm.
And when you feel that's actually really important for you and a priority,
Yeah.
uh, you will find time for that. Perhaps you exchange something that's
Mm.
actually not of such deep value, and instead make time for
Yeah.
yourself, or you get up earlier, or you sleep a little later, or like there's
Mm.
certainly, if it is of value for you, possible to find moments to integrate that. And from this place of centeredness, I feel also this feeling of overwhelm
Mm.
is reducing,
Yeah.
maybe even falling away, and you feel actually prepared and capable, and not only prepared and capable, but you can joyfully actually tackle everything that's presented
Yeah.
by life, even though it might be really difficult
Mm.
development of your child right now, or things
Mm.
in work life or wherever. So I feel this is important to somehow create space for self care.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, two stories come to mind. One is in America. There was this great yogi who went and lived in America, and one of his kind of like top students was a multi millionaire businessman. He in by now today's standards would be probably a multi billionaire, but he was one of the wealthiest people in the world at that point. And he would come in the morning and he would put a sign on the door, in a meeting, and then he would be in a meeting every day until like 9 or 10 in the morning. And finally, his secretary came to him and was like, "What's going on? Like, you cannot be in a meeting every single day. Like, what are you doing?" And he said, "I'm meditating." And she said, "You're meditating? Like, you have just all this responsibility, all these people that you need to meet, all these things you need to do. How can you afford to meditate?" And he said, "I cannot afford not to."
Hmm.
It's like,
Yeah,
you know,
beautiful, powerful. Yeah.
just this is the thing that allows me to be present in all these things that I'm responsible for. And the other story actually comes from Muji. This is a very interesting story that he sometimes tells, that he had this one student who he met, and he then ended up meeting her mother. And he said her mother came and sat with him, and she said, "I'm absolutely filled in my life. There's no space for anything. The minute that I wake up to the minute that I go to bed, I'm taking care of my family, I'm taking care of my responsibilities, I'm taking care of everything that I need. At the end of the day, I have 10 minutes left. What should I do with those 10 minutes?" And he said, "Can you stay as nothing? Can you let go of every single one of those responsibilities and stay absolutely present with yourself as none of those things?" And, I kind of one of Muji's teachers, one of the great sages of Advaita, used to say, "It doesn't even have to be a minute, it's 1 second." If you really divest yourself of everything, 1 second can be profoundly, profoundly rejuvenating on the level of what's beyond your body and your mind. Um, and I think he told that story a lot because also he was very touched by her. Like, to be of service all the time in your world, you only have 10 minutes left, and you ask a great spiritual teacher, "What should I do with those 10 minutes?" I think he was touched by the depth of her surrender
Mm.
also, right? It's like, I'm serviceful all the time, but I have this little bit of time left. What do I do with that time? Stay as nothing. And he asked her, do you understand? She said, I understand completely.
Mm.
It's like, okay, something beautiful will grow from that soil, I think.
You know, what I love about this is also the aspect that it's not about tons of time that you need for that.
Mm, mm,
Um, I also remember that I felt at one point pretty overwhelmed, and I was asking you for advice.
mm,
And you told me, I see that you have a lot on your plate. What you need to do is to be fast in your transitions, to leave
mm.
behind where you come from and be really fully available for the next to come, to not
Mm.
kind of invest and stay stuck for too long with past and future, but be able to swiftly move from one to the other. And I felt
Yeah.
that really helped me
Beautiful.
to you know, not feel overwhelmed as much. And what I also like is it doesn't need to be 90 minutes of yoga practice every
Yeah.
day to connect to yourself. It can be
Mm.
10 minutes. A meditation doesn't have to be an hour, it can be 5 minutes or 15.
Yeah.
Um, I feel what's of value is also this short
Mm.
or shorter moments of self care, dropping in and doing nothing in a way.
Yeah.
I feel this is where so much recharge comes from, where so much
Mm.
nourishment comes from. So we don't need to plan, you know, big chunks of time,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
to learn to
Yeah.
quickly transition and also into the space of now
Yeah.
is self nourishment. I have 10 minutes. Okay, what do I
Mm.
do?
Mm.
I don't hang out on my phone on social media,
Yeah.
but I just go into Shavasana and
Yeah.
be in my heart,
Yeah.
or legs up the wall, or whatever
Yeah.
it is for you. Like go out in your garden, be with the flower.
Yeah.
Um,
And this is also, I feel like, you know, integrate those moments, even if there's zero time, integrate that attitude into movement,
hmm,
right? It's like life is moving, life is unfolding, it's really fast. My children
mm,
need this is happening. It's like just inside of that moment, even when it's a very stressful moment, have this attitude, just like, you know, that you're just bowing in front of life, you know. And once in Varanasi, when I was living there, Varanasi is a crazy city and it's very hectic and it's extremely loud and it's crazy. It's also exceedingly mystical and amazing and beautiful, but it's the elements of both are there. And at one point, I met this beautiful soul, and I was saying, you know, I just want for a moment to be a little bit outside of the chaos of Varanasi. I was living in Varanasi at that point. I need a place that's kind of like silent for reflection. Do you have a suggestion of where I can go? And he said, yes, right here. We were surrounded by people, by a fully chaotic situation, and I felt, wow, there's something really beautiful to that sharing, right? It's like, I need a place of silence. Where should I find it? In your own heart. Like, you know, and we just taught at a silent retreat a few days ago, right? And
mm,
that was kind of like one of the things of just like, okay, does silent retreat help? Yes, definitely. It's beautiful. If it fits into your life and you have time and you can step outside and practice deeply, it's something very beneficial and extremely beautiful. But even if you have that opportunity, don't create the idea that you're in this and now you're in that and then you long to be back in this. It's like, rather, it's one integrated experience. And in the midst of the chaos is also the silence. And, you know, I feel like that attitude of reverence and just like presence and presentness, as things are unfolding, the worst situation happens. Okay, you know, there's a story. I don't know if it's a true story, but I feel like it must be because it was told to me by somebody very beautiful. That someone was in a situation and they broke their leg, and they were kind of like transiting to the ground because the leg was in pain and they were on their way falling basically to the ground. And as the person was falling to the ground, someone overheard them say, like, thank you, basically.
Hmm.
Like the person just had it in his heart, like, no matter what is happening to me, just like this reverence for life. And then, bam, he breaks his leg and he's falling to the ground. And it's like the same reverence is there because it's been there through every moment
Hmm.
of his life. And so, you know, then the challenging situation comes. It doesn't change. Like, you know, his sense of reverence is still there.
Beautiful. So this was Wisdom in Motion with the Akasha family. Keep shining in the spirit of yoga.